Right? And I'm not playing no games. Yeah.
I'm Pops, and let's talk Saturday morning cartoons. Oh, loving it. Loving my Saturday morning cartoons. This is X-Men animated series coming up in 30 minutes. 9:30 Eastern time, Batman animated series. Oh, it's another great week too. You don't want to miss that one. Oh, X-Men is completely different. And this episode is man, it's I'm very conflicted with this episode. I love this episode, and then I have such a big issue with this episode, and I don't quite understand what they were doing, but this centers mostly around Wolverine. He starts off in Canada. He's received a call to go there, and he's basically being confronted with the Vindicator and Alpha Flight, more specifically. And you end up basically having this great introduction to Alpha Flight, basically in action, right? Puck is attacking him. The Shaman even has to attack him. Sasquatch, North Star, they're all there, right? And then you have Wolverine flashback to the Weapon X experimentation, which is again right to Marvel Comics Presents. I'll try to put a link there. I did a conversation on that during my good, bad, and don't read. Great, good, great, and don't. And Weapon X is just, if you're a Wolverine fan, you have to have read Marvel Comics Presents. So this points right to that. And it's really great for kids because you have sort of like this, the essence of everything is there. It's dark and edgy, but it never gets too far. You have like when his claws come out and it hurts. He's like, I'm not doing labs, man. I'm not doing it, right? But when he is finally captured and he's there, he's like, why are you doing this? What do you want? And it's like, well, they need to figure out how to experiment on him so they can figure out how to do it again. So it's revealed, though, that Heather doesn't have any options, right? And you have a flashback to why Wolverine and Heather and Vindicator, who is James, why they have a bond, how they had found him, and they're the ones who convinced him to join Department H, which is this covert group in Canada. This is kind of like tied directly into, even though I mean obviously all the animation stuff's different, but it ties right into the original origin story that was in Incredible Hulk 180 and 181. And at the time, I remember reading, one of the first times I read that, I was like, what the heck is Department H? I didn't even know, because I hadn't read any Alpha Flight. I hadn't read any of that. So I didn't even know what they were talking about. So the cartoon really does a good job. Again, it's like these breadcrumbs of their comic book lore, their history, these great stories, tying it into this universe, this animated series that they're going for here, right? And of course, Heather doesn't want to hurt him. And when the experiment starts to happen and Wolverine cries out, this is what Jean picks up on, because she's been trying to find the professor using Cerebro, but she picks up, oh man, where's Wolverine? But nothing comes of all that. It was kind of weird to even have all that mentioned. I think it could have been, I don't know. I don't think that we needed any of that. A standalone Wolverine episode would have been fine without any of that. Anyway, it gets so bad that Heather's like, I don't want any part of it, right? And when the general attacks Heather and they're over, the other Alpha Flight members are overhearing part of this, they realize, oh, he's the villain. The general is the villain, right? Now, Vindicator's still being a jerk, but you have the general who immediately there's no pause. The general turns all of his soldiers, which turn out to be robots, and Berserker Wolverine joins the fray, and it's really pretty good. Really pretty good. I think that is the strength of the show, is the Weapon X flashback and understanding more about Wolverine. And you have sort of like this emotional roller coaster you have with him joining Department H, him respecting Heather the way he does, and trying to be, and he's not being cruel to the Alpha Flight guys. He understands why they're trying to do this. Well, I'm sorry, he doesn't quite understand. And then he kind of figuring it out. They're not really enemies. It's just like, who's telling you to do this kind of stuff, right? It's all very, very good. Pops, you're asking yourself, well, what is your problem with this episode then? My problem is that there's a cut scene in the middle of the show. This is the third or fourth episode now where we keep having this backstory, this little second story of Savage Land, which is where Xavier and Magneto are. They don't have their powers, they're there. And they have this cutscene like in the middle of the episode. Like it's not in the beginning, not at the end. We've had that done both times, and now it's in the middle. I feel like, do you want a second story, but you don't know where to put it? Why don't you just do a Savage Land story? Like it's just really strange why they would spread it out and cut it the way they did instead of just having a standalone story. But in this episode, it's really quick. It's about Magneto's creations. We mean you no harm, but they attack anyway. Charles is saved again by Magneto from falling off the bridge. He cuts the bridge. They escape. That's it. I mean, it's like this really short thing. It's like, why is it here? So this episode is kind of, man, I'm so conflicted because the Weapon X stuff is so good, but then you have these two pieces, and I got to be honest, Puck's voice is terrible. Oh my gosh, it's brutally bad. I don't really know what they were going for. It just, to me, is a huge miss. Did not like it. Don't like it. Yeah. But man, the X-Men show is so much more interesting if you're like a comic book fan watching the show, because you know all these little stories and you can pick up all these breadcrumbs. And as a new fan, it hopefully is what they intended it was, to make you be interested in where these stories come from. Oh, there's a comic book for that, a comic book for that, comic book for that, right? Compared to Batman, which is completely different. It's more about create origins, expanding user, alternate universe kind of thing. But I have to be honest, I think the best part, I just don't know why they didn't cut the Savage Land stuff out and have a longer shot of Wolverine like wandering through the woods with the helmet on, Heather and finding, they find him and they help him. Like it would have made sense to just have that sequence instead of wasting the screen time for Savage Land when you need just to have Savage Land, and then have these weird cutaways with Jean. It could have opened with that and then gone into the Wolverine story, was probably the best way to have the Jean Cerebro stuff, not have it back and forth the way they did. Anyway, that's my take. I know many of you are commenting on these videos. Tell me what you guys think. I'm really enjoying it, and I hope you guys are too. And thank you so much.
Ross, all I do is chill. My life is a thrill, for real, Bob Ross. I be too calm for the drama. You don't wanna cause a problem, I'll solve it, Bob Ross.